Hello and welcome to the Gilded Flask, where adventure is never far. My name is Barry and I am the Dungeon Master for the Gilded Flask, and today I have a wonderful video for you with 5 tips on how to make your Dungeons & Dragons session more memorable. These are just some small tips that we've picked up as we have been playing, and I figured I would share them with you. They're both for Dungeon Masters and players alike, so feel free to watch all of them. There's no spoilers in there, they're just some casual observations of the sessions that we have been playing. Before we get into that, we also stream on Twitch. Every Saturday we are live and we're having a lot of fun over there. Currently playing The Curse of Strahd at the time of recording this. If you would like to see that, then head on over to our Twitch, which is twitch.tv/The Gilded Flask. All 4 of us are over there. We have individual Twitch accounts as well. We are Barry, Daniel, Anne, and Marissa, and our Twitch handles are Papazillion, Drunkrat, Anpop, and Dol Fatal. If you want to give us a follow over there, that would be absolutely fantastic. If you can't catch us on Twitch, we also post our recordings to YouTube on this channel every Monday, so be sure to check those out as well. I hope you like the content. If you do, please consider dropping a subscription. It really helps. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the 5 tips. Alright, so tip number 5. Be descriptive in your actions, also when you're fighting. Now this might sound pretty obvious, but I've seen a lot of sessions where players literally describe what they're doing and then move on. For example, it's your turn, you're fighting a big troll and you decide to cast Firebolt. So you say, I cast Firebolt. You roll your dice, you check what the damage is, you subtract that from the enemy's health, and you move on. And that's it. There's nothing wrong with that, mind you, but it does miss out on some awesome roleplay opportunities, because the fight itself should be an epic battle, even if you're just using a Firebolt. This is an epic fight. You are fighting for your life. It is, it's a dangerous situation. You're there with your friends or with people that you've just run into, and, you need to save one another because it is a dangerous situation. So you think for a moment what you can do, and the only thing that comes to mind is using a Firebolt. So you envision a flame in your hand, you look at the enemy, and you hurl that Firebolt at him in the hopes that it will at least hurt him. Now that description is a lot more roleplay, rather than just saying the action that you're doing. And I feel that if everyone does that in a party, it adds a layer of immersiveness to your game. So role-playing out your actions definitely helps in making your game more memorable, because sometimes an awesome spell can really turn the tide of battle, not necessarily in numbers, but just in general feeling. A cool, well-placed spell can make the others feel like you have a fighting chance to survive, even when the survival chance is slim. And that is exactly the kind of feeling that you would want to have during a fight. Of course, this also applies to all the roleplay situations, but generally speaking, if you know your Dungeons & Dragons, usually the roleplay aspect is pretty well role-played out. Consider doing this in your fight as well to make your game absolutely awesome. Tip number 4 is for the DMs out there. Please remember that backstories are important. Now this one might seem like an open door, right? Backstories matter, we all know, because backstories give a bit of insight and understanding about the character that we have in front of us. They're not just a created character, they have been living in this world for a little while. And the backstory sort of explains what they've been doing there and why they have certain mannerisms, why they have certain items on them, etc. That's great, but I feel there is a second layer to this which is almost equally important. The backstory will allow you to blend in certain things of the character into your campaign. And I've been doing this since day one, either a homebrew campaign or one of the default campaigns that you can play. You can always homebrew things into campaigns to make them stick with your players. There's something incredibly cool for a player to be a couple of sessions in and then find a lost heirloom that belonged to your grandmother, or that the magical weapon that you're looking for, which by default in the campaign needs to be a magic sword, turns out to be a magic battle axe because no one in the party uses swords, but you do have a barbarian with you that always uses big axes. And you've changed the sword around to an axe so it makes it fitting for the barbarian. That is why you can use backstories to change around your campaign a bit, to make it stick with your players. It makes it more memorable. You can, of course, change items like this. You can also change the entire story. This is, of course, how wild you want to get. It's the great fun of D&D, right? You can change it however you want. Use backstories whenever you're considering changing things about the story to make the story more about the players. Within reason, of course, sometimes you can't change things around and then they have to be the way they are. But if you see an opportunity to add in an item or to change an item, to change a bit of the story, to add another character in that will be part of the major plot, or to even change a character of the major plot to become someone that the players know, makes the sessions so great when they finally find out that, hey, that one guy that they've had trouble with for so long turns out to be the big bad enemy that they need to defeat in this campaign. It really adds. Consider it. Alright, tip number 3. Consider an in-game way to feed hints to your players. Now, nobody likes to railroad adventures. When your players are doing the things they do, sometimes it's great to just leave them be and see what they figure out on their own. If they have to move from village to village, city to city, place to place, to find a couple of hints, to finally puzzle all the pieces together and understand what they ultimately need to be doing, that's part of the fun of Dungeons & Dragons. But sometimes, we all know these situations, you notice that your players are stumped. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. They got a couple of things to do and they don't see how they're connected. And you could spend another 5 sessions and they will still be exactly where they are. Maybe one village over. At moments like that, it is fine to feed a hint to your player. But the best way to do that is to incorporate that into the story, because you can just tell them as a dungeon master, maybe you want to go to that one village. Sure, if that moves the game along, feel free, who am I to judge? But how much more fun is it to allow the players every once in a while to use something in-game to get an answer? How I solve this in one of my campaigns is to actually give my players a Ouija board. One of my players is a College of Spirits bard. So she's all about, the undead and the occult. And having a Ouija board is just almost logic to see her walking around with that. Every once in a while, when they're stumped, they use the Ouija board and I give them some cryptic answers. Some that are true, some that are lied because, ghosts are not bound to be telling the truth all the time. But at least I give hints in a certain way. And when my characters are stumped, this is a perfect way to move them, to nudge them in the right direction. Obviously, you don't have to give the answer, the stone you're looking for is found under the waterfall. No, you don't have to do that. But you can hint at a waterfall, or you can hint at water, and that'll give them something to go on. And if you incorporate that into the game, it makes it memorable, because it is actually part of the story, and they still kind of thought about it themselves, because they decided to use a Ouija board or something like that. You can probably think of something of your own to make it part of the story and to make the players be the ones to still discover this. Tip number 2, don't be afraid of flaws. This is a thing that I see when especially new players are creating their characters. Everyone wants to be a hero. And I think if we think back to our own first characters, most of them are pretty cookie cutter heroes in a shape or a form, right? You don't have to be the Superman hero kind of, hero, but one of our first characters probably was, the very edgy rogue, or the kleptomaniac rogue, or the valiant paladin that stands for, vigilance and godliness and everything. The usual default characters. That's great, because those characters are very relatable, they're very memorable, because they make sense. On the flip side, when you're making a character like that, they do need to have a flaw, right? It's one of the options on the character sheet, so you might as well fill it in. And what I see is that some players that really want to play, the hero that they envision, is that they either don't add any flaws, or when they do add a flaw, it is something like worries too much, or is busy with his faith all the time. Obviously, a good role player can turn that into an amazing flaw. If you use that correctly in the right timing, if you use it too much, that is sometimes hilarious. You can turn it into a flaw, but those points aren't really flaws. A flaw would be more something along the lines of, I can't work together with groups more than 4 people. Or I am deathly afraid of bridges. Those things are impactful flaws that your character has that show that even though your hero seems to be molded as a perfect hero, at the seams, there's still some cracks. Because at the end of the day, you're only human. Ralph, Dwarf, whatever race you've chosen, of course. Having flaws, in my experience, is the spice of the campaign. Because the campaign itself, of course, is a great story, and your players are great players. But sometimes the flaws add such a dynamic to the game that they even start to become a thing of their own, with a couple of good rolls, or at the very least, they give a situation which can be hilarious, or devastating, or heartbreaking. But they trigger emotions in the party, and they make it very memorable, right? To give you an example, a character that I once had is, as I just said, deathly afraid of bridges. I had that with one of my characters. And at some point, we had to go to a village. And this village was on an island in a river, surrounded by 6 bridges, kind of like a spider with 6 legs. There was no way into the village other than over the bridge, unless we would have taken a boat, but nobody thought of that. It took us about half a session to get my character over the bridge. I was really inconvenient for my party, and thinking back on it, maybe a little too much. But at the time, we had such a laugh at the table. It was so funny, because there was no way I was going over the bridge, and ultimately, they just had to knock me out and carry me over. So flaws add a layer of emotion to your campaigns. So when you're creating a character, don't be afraid to add a flaw to it. Flaws are great, and they don't have to be crippling if you play them correctly, but make sure that you add a flaw that is a flaw. The rest of your characters, the rest of the party, will ultimately thank you for it. And finally, my number 1 tip, and this one is so important. Apply the rule of cool. This counts for everyone, but especially for Dungeon Masters. The rule of cool is one of those unwritten rules that everyone knows, but it's not official, so you don't have to use it. So for those of you that don't know what the rule of cool is, it basically means if someone suggests an action or a way to handle a certain situation, which is descriptively really cool or really fitting, but it's going to be hard to implement it because there's no rules for it to, accommodate, consider the rule of cool. Consider, okay, we're going to do it, but we're going to find a way to sort of blend that in so it won't give you a huge advantage. An example. In a fight that a couple of my players had not too long ago, they were standing in a room and there was this giant dinner table in the middle of the room. Now, the cleric of the party was on one side of the table and being ganged up on by ghasts. So she was in trouble. On the other side of the dinner table was our paladin, and he wanted to help her. And there were a couple of things he could do. He could just run around the table and attack her. He could move over the table, which I think I would technically say is rough terrain because it's a table. But he asked me, hey, so can I just scoot over the table, weapon forward, and just sort of strike them while I fly over the table? There's no inherent ruling that I know of that would allow me to say, yeah, sure, just do that and roll a 5 and you're fine. No, there's no ruling for that. So I think because it was such a great idea, I said, all right, we'll apply the rule of cool. We'll find a way to make this work. The way I apply the rule of cool is whenever someone comes with a situation like this, which is really cool, I usually let them gamble for it. I let them throw a normal d20, and on a 10 and up, it will succeed. On a 1 through 9, it won't. So there's a little bit bigger chance that they will succeed, because it's cool. Usually the trade-off is, alright, there's 3 options you can do. 1, you don't do it. You don't have to throw your dice, just act normal, you walk around the table. 2, you scoot over the table, you throw your d20, you hit 10 to 20, you will actually do what you just said. So you scoot over the table and you attack the enemy, which I will probably grant just an attack with advantage, right? Because they don't see him coming, so it's an advantage attack. Whatever, it's a little bonus because it is really cool what they're doing. Plus, they can get over the table and they're on the other side. Conversely, if they throw a 1 through 9, they will scoot over the table and land face first on the ground on the other side, which is, a disadvantage, if you will. So there's a bit of a gamble element to it. Whenever the player comes with a really cool idea, that is a great way to handle it. If you can just implement it as is, if they come with a great idea and you're like, yeah, sure, go ahead, then go ahead. If you're unsure, but you do think that the idea that the player has is great, consider the rule of cool. Consider still allowing it and just finding a way in the moment to let them gamble for it. If they want to climb the wall halfway and then jump down onto the neck of an enemy and then stab him in the neck, there is probably a way that you can do that rule-wise, because you can do climbing speed and then you need to jump, so you need to do like a dexterity check maybe because you're jumping, and then you maybe need to consider fall damage. That's a whole lot of considerations. You could also say, okay, the fact that you thought of this is really cool. So, all right, give me the specifics. You don't climb all too high. You try to jump onto their neck and you attack them. Okay, roll me a d20. If you hit anywhere between 10 and 20, you will succeed. You're on their neck and you will make the attack. I won't give bonus damage to it because this is a very difficult, action that you're doing. But you're on their neck, which is technically a grapple, which is a huge advantage. Conversely, if you throw 1 to 9, you climb the wall, you jump, and you land face first in front of the the enemy. You land face first in the dirt in front of them, and you probably take a bit of fall damage as well. So the choice is yours. Do you want to be cool and have this element of surprise? Or do you still want to be cool, but more in the hilarious sense, and just, not be so effective in combat for one round? It's a great way to solve situations like this, and it really fosters the idea that players should have, that they have control over the battle. They can add their own views to the battle, and if they imagine something like, hey, can I do this, that should be rewarded rather than being said, no, you can't, because the rules don't allow it. Do allow it, please. Allow it through the rule of cool, and find a way together to make it a very memorable situation. And that just about sums up all the 5 tips that I had for you today. I hope there was something in there that you can use in your future D&D sessions. And if not, then, well, I'm sorry, but at least I tried. Thank you for watching. My name is Barry. I'm the Dungeon Master for The Gilded Flask. You can find us over on Twitch at twitch.tv/The Gilded Flask, where we stream live every Saturday. Be sure to check our Twitch page for the current schedule and time in your time zone. If you can't catch us over there, watch our episodes on Monday when we release them on YouTube in this channel. I hope to see you over there. I hope to see you on Twitch. Say hi. I'll probably say hi back. And if you do catch us on Twitch, every time we take a break, we do hop down in our live channel in our Discord, so you can just talk with us if you would like to. We hope to see you over there. And if not, then I hope to see you somewhere in the comment section or anywhere else. You have a wonderful day. I'll see you around. Goodbye.